Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful. When the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. The 9th Friday. Not a ton of news today, so we might be able to actually just chill today. Let's go to the chart. E-mini. So yesterday, well, we had this huge overnight move, and I said, hey, it's going to be a gap fill day. Well, they didn't quite fill the gap. I mean, it's a still pretty big gap, but we did have a pretty good recovery, although they didn't hold all of it, right? So it looks like this is a buy dip, the dip, and then rebalance. There was a pretty significant market on close imbalance going into the close, so there was a lot of selling yesterday. Let's put it that way. Now in the overnight, the S&P 500 has recovered considerably. The Chinese decreased their interest rates essentially by 50 basis points, and that seems to have really boosted the Asian markets and is perhaps part of the impetus for the rise. Over in the treasuries, yesterday they really whoosh. I mean, they took off. They're coming back pretty hard, but I mean, come on, look at the week. Is just insane. It was just an insane move this week. There could still be some upside here in the treasuries. I've been looking at some analyst reports that suggest that there is still some upside potential from systemic programs coming in and so forth. And I mean, there's been a lot of stuff running on this. So it could be an interesting Friday. Coming over to oil. Oil's still kind of like in recovery mode, but like the OPEC thing hasn't resolved. I haven't heard anything about that. Gold and silver maybe slightly up, but not really doing anything. Silver continues to underperform gold for some reason. And then we got copper rising a little bit. It looks like there is a little bit of flight to safety going on out there. But the dollar has come down, so that's another thing to that would be pushing them around. So back over to here. We have Canadian numbers here in 2 minutes, so that will be a thing, but those usually aren't significant numbers. So let's turn on the text to speech and everything. Uzi says, you catch that CNB, you must have meant CNBC article about how inflation is good because it means higher salaries. Well, if we saw wage inflation, that would be a good thing, yes. It would kind of be a good thing. Good morning. Let's see here. Get that going. Let's go and see what they're saying. I think I need to blow my nose here. Hold on. I don't know. Maybe it didn't really anything come out. Maybe I'm just feeling stuffy today. The top story on CNBC is Biden to sign order to crack down on big tech and boost competition across the board. Well, that would certainly not be particularly great for Stocks? No, I don't see a story. Well, here's the thing. As I understand it, it's good to have a certain amount of inflation. Now, why the 2% symmetrical target that the Federal Reserve has settled on, there's kind of some weird reasons as to why they settled on that number. And I'm not convinced that it is actually like the optimal number. They've kind of treated it like it's arbitrary, though. Like from the research that I've seen discussed, it was like almost like arbitrarily decided. But some inflation is good. Like we could have it so that it was, neutral, right? And we just don't get inflation. But having the inflation is good for people that taking on debt, because you go and you buy your house, and then 30 years from now, that house payment should be a significantly less portion of your pay. But that hasn't been happening. We haven't been getting inflation, and workers' wages haven't been rising. And so rising wages overall would be a good thing. But when the whole concern, the problem that people have is like, I don't make enough, things are too expensive, raising everybody's wages doesn't fix that particular problem, right? A little inflation is good, but forcing everybody's wages higher doesn't solve anything. Okay, well, so I was saying that, the treasuries could still have some upside on here, and you're getting a little bit of a... I'm going to have to redo that. Okay. Actually, we'll do 2 just to even it out. It does look like there's a pretty good bid starting out from the U.S. session. Oh dear. Look at how hard the 5-year came down there. Let's see here. Where did that come from? That might have come from the dollar there. We might get some interesting flows here from the Japanese yen and everything else. It being the weekend. Oh, let's see here. I thought I turned on the squawk here, but I didn't. Let's fix that. Canadian employment change. Yeah. Canadian numbers don't typically move the market for whatever reason. I would think that they would maybe be like a mild impact sort of a thing, but I've never seen them move off of the Canadian employment numbers. Maybe I have and I just don't remember it, but I'm pretty sure. Good grief. You know what pisses me off about Twitter is you go and you have some conversation and like you're done with it. It's like you said the thing that you wanted to say and you don't care what anybody else thinks. but it continues to send you notifications like 3 days after the fact. Freaking Twitter. You know what? Like, we talk about the toxicity of social media and everything. It's just Twitter. It's the way that they run that service sucks. Yeah, that's going to drag it down there. So I'm seeing a little bit more demand in the 10-year treasury. The other two are, there was a little bit of a push and pull going on right now. The other two are trying to push them up trying to drag it down with them, and it's not working so far. But you see there's a pretty big offer on the 5-year there, for instance. But the 10, it was able to tick back up. Well, the big offer in the 5-year did disappear. Oh yes, we should, now that it's past 10:30, we should turn on the algorithm. Will it let me? It won't let me turn it on. Oh, I know why it won't let me turn it on. Because I didn't connect the data. Durr. Okay, it's better. Oh, I lost my focus there. I should have scratched that. You see that? Pretty nasty. Okay, let's start over here. I do think at some point we could get some buying activity, but at the moment they're tinkering around with us, aren't they? And it doesn't read it really. If we're going to do it in the 10, we really got to get a good price, like right here. Maybe right here. Maybe even 17. Because you can see here, like the curve, there's flattening going on, but there's outsized demand in the 10-year. Yeah. There's a little bit of a curve, right? The 5 and the 30 are down a tick further than the 10-year. So it seems like there's outsized demand in the time. But I'm not seeing like the volume trading to justify that. It's just that it's not like ticking down. Well, they are eating into 18, but it's a little scattered and suspect. Chicago Board of Trade. I wonder, now that the CME is no longer like running the pits and everything, what do they do with that floor space? Is it just empty? Do they replace it with computers? Turn it into a museum? I would love to go there. Okay. So now what about the E-mini? I'm not too sure if I really want to touch the E-mini today, to be honest. Like, probably still trend up, but because, you know, yesterday was kind of the gap fill, and I don't know, today is probably going to be really messy in the 10-year. Or sorry, in the E-mini. Oh my gosh, maybe I just shouldn't be touching it at all today because I seem like I'm like, my mind is not 100%. It could be nice with a small strip club. That would make a nice dance floor. This just goes back to that whole thing about, did you know that the stripper pole, it spins? Like the pole, actually, that's how they do all that stuff. It's the pole spins. They're just hanging on to a pole. Makes it way less impressive, don't you think? I don't know. I didn't know that. Until I think there's maybe it's just a bearish day, but the 5-year in particular seems to be dragging him down. But notice that those last few ticks down weren't on very much volume. Like it just went. And are we seeing some movement in the dollar as this goes? It seems like maybe. And maybe in the yen, so that might be part of it. Wow. I was closing my tabs and I forgot that I didn't get to read this Spinosaur sign order to crack down on big tech, so I was just reading this top part of it. The sweeping order, which includes 72 actions and recommendations that involve a dozen federal agencies, is intended to reshape the thinking around corporate consolidation and antitrust laws. That is a lot. Urged the Federal Trade Commission to challenge prior bad mergers that previous administrations let slide, pushing the FTC to ban occupational licensing restrictions, arguing they impede. Well, that would be really good. Encouraging the FTC to ban or limit non-compete agreements. Oh, yeah, that would... Okay, so you know what they're talking about with that? It's like if I work for a big bank and I want to leave, they always make you sign a non-compete argument when you start working for them that says that if I leave that company, I won't go and work for a competitor for a certain number of years, so that I can't just go to the other company and sell all of their secrets. That's what that's about. And particularly in the tech industry, it's like super bad. Like you almost even have to question if you want to work there if they're forcing you to sign something like that. But it's also often unenforceable. So encouraging the FTC to ban or limit those agreements, and I don't think that they could ban them outright, but limiting them, I think would probably be a net benefit. And that kind of sounds like the sort of thing that Trump would maybe do, and it could help economic activity. It's kind of on that one's kind of on the edges. Banning occupational licensing restrictions, that's kind of like you can't run a business that braids hair because you have to get a hairdresser's license, right? That's what that is. So encouraging the FTC to restore net neutrality rules. Well, I'm not really a huge fan of that, to be honest with you. Remember when they were making such a big deal about net neutrality? Uzi will remember this. They're like, the internet as we know it is going to come to an end. We have to stop. We have to save net neutrality. Ajit Pai is evil. Oh, and nothing happened. I mean, granted, there's a pandemic and everything, but so maybe like that pushed anything that would have happened back, but like nothing's happened. Nothing has happened. And I think that some of the rules that they kind of want are stupid. Like here's what I think. I think that all traffic, that you can't throttle traffic. That's what I think. I don't think that you should be allowed to throttle traffic. But if you want to make like a high-speed lane for a specific type of traffic, like say Netflix, because that's like the majority of the bandwidth these days, I think they should be able to. People are worried about ISPs throttling and favoring content and wound up just being fine with tech companies doing it. Well, tech companies don't exactly throttle specific type of content per se, but they just outright ban certain viewpoints. Yeah. And then, yeah, they're totally okay with it. That one it really is difficult for me to wrap my head around. Like, they come in and they make the argument, well, they're a private company, they should be allowed to do what they want. And I'm sitting back here being like, okay, so first of all, that's not necessarily true. If they're doing if they're doing something that is significantly against the public interest, then the government can step in and do something about it. But two, the whole thing here is that they shouldn't be doing it. Like, are you like this? This is the thing that bothers me about that argument, is that they never they avoid answering the question, should they do that at all, right? Because they are being ideologically inconsistent. If they were being ideologically consistent, they would come in and they would say that company shouldn't be doing that, but we can't stop them, right? But really what they're doing is they're avoiding saying that they shouldn't be doing that, because what they're doing is something that benefits them. And so really what they're doing is they're allowing it, when if it was against them, it wouldn't be allowed. And y'all know it, right? It's not the concentration camps that anger people, it's who's in them. Ooh, I've never heard that before. It's to the gulag for you, Uzi. It really is sinister. Like, I don't think that they teach enough in school about how all that stuff in Russia happened. Because when you really look at the history of it, it's really quite sinister. And everybody treats it like, well, okay, what Germany did was like this awful human atrocity that is unique in its evil nature, that could only have occurred with the from a truly evil man. That's the way that everybody treats it. But they don't talk about what happened in Russia. And when you really go through the history of what happened in Russia, it was the exact same thing. It's just that instead of a genocide of a race, it was a genocide of a social class. And that I think is way more terrifying. Yeah. Because to most of us in America, at least I used to think this, that the whole idea of treating somebody poorly or frankly, wanting to genocide, get completely rid of, is just so absolutely ridiculous, right? But classism, right? We see that all the time. There's plenty of that kind of sentiment in the United States, right? And when you look at the Russian history and then you realize, oh, they literally came in and villainized an entire class of people and then killed them off or sent them to work camps. And that could happen. Yeah, that's a little scary. A lot of 1% people are radically partisan enough if you brought on enough experts and politicians to convince one side that killing themselves would save the environment. At least 1% of people who hear that message would. You're probably right. Actually, 1% isn't a huge barrier. Well, you know what? I was okay with taking 17.5 because it was the middle and everything, but it's looking like the situation that I was looking for is not what's actually going on, and probably this one's gonna fail too. I'm gonna give it the room, but I'm not too hopeful about it at the moment. COVID made me realize that I know a lot of people who would guard the gates if those camps were a thing, assuming the right people were in them. Hold on. Apparently they changed the Canadian number on the newswire, but not a big deal. Yeah, and that's why I was saying, like, this frankly, what we get taught, that's we're like way off of trading, but freaking, it's something that I think about from time to time and concerns me. The narrative that we are sold when you're taught in school about World War II, I think is a pile of shit. They say that this was some uniquely evil atrocity that only could have occurred because of the actions of one terribly awful person that led people into doing something terrible. And that's not what happened. That's not what happened. Humans are prone to genocide. The reason that we humans are in the place that we are and not Neanderthals is because of genocide. Okay. And it is very easy to turn groups against each other to the point of we need to completely eliminate them. It's like an evolutionary trait. So to come in and say, well, that sort of thing would never happen in the United States, it absolutely could. If all you got to do is give somebody the power to do it, and it'll happen. That's all it takes. You look at it, or here's what happens. You give the state the power to commit genocide, and it happens. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah. We've witnessed an inkling of this in this very chat. Well, yeah, so you have the perfect case is that what we see happen in the modern internet is essentially the digital equivalent of genocide. They obviously they couldn't kill you, but they are essentially doing everything they can to remove certain classes from the internet on communities as far as they can. So yeah. But that's my opinion, is that if you give a government the degree of power to commit genocide, that is inevitable that they will use it. Tommy says, high inflation and poverty. You know, it's interesting to me, Tommy. So if we can kind of come back to the markets a little bit. The inflation narrative is interesting to me. So there is a group of people on the internet tend to be interested in markets. I would definitely put like zero hedge in this kind of bucket. But there's a group of, Peter Schiff in particular tend to be very concerned about inflation. Even when the larger problem that is going on is deflation. Like for the past 12, 15 years, there's been this group of people that are like, hyperinflation is coming. And then like we get deflation, right? And so off of COVID, they finally had a chance where it's like, we're going to get some significant inflation. It's probably going to be transitory, but we're finally going to get some significant inflation, right? That was a nice cascade of cells. Yes, it was. It was, again, very forced, though, wouldn't you say? It's like they're yanking the orders out from underneath of them. It looks to me like the market maker is kind of testing the sides, and all of the weak players are puking. So I probably shouldn't be in a position. Can I start over again? Can I come in and I can say that is the kind of behavior that I don't want to be involved in? Like something unclogged, yeah. That kind of, that doesn't give me a solid direction of which it's going to go. I mean, because they could turn into a trend down, but it could also like reverse on a dime, and I probably don't want to have a position in that. And when I'm looking, I'm also like the wrong way. Like if I wanted to come in and try and take a tick, it would make a lot more sense to try and take it short at 16 or 16.5 than to be long at the moment. I don't know why I was taking it long. What I'm noticing is that the days when I wake up and I just don't feel very good, and then I come in and I trade, and I don't seem to trade very well. And it's so weird because I don't feel like I'm doing anything different, but there's like a very clear pattern of behavior, and like I come in and I'll start making dumb trades. So let's continue to take it if we actually see something. But at the moment, because it's that like very forced pulling sort of stuff, I'm a little cautious. Now, of course, that's often how it happens when it's short. But like you can see right there at 16, there's a pretty significant amount of absorption. So I don't think that we can read that last little move down as a sign of informed trading. Doesn't look like informed trading to me. It looks like a stop run. And also, well, maybe not even just a stop run. It also is dollar driven, I think. So I should be paying attention to this more. Maybe we need to move this over somewhere or something. I don't know. The dollar, because I just don't see it. I don't pay attention to it. But that looks like a big deal, yeah? anyways, the whole inflation thing. So like over the past week, the bond market has moved up, rates have decreased. So it doesn't look to me like the bond market is concerned about inflation. In fact, if anything, it looks like the bond market is concerned again about like possible generational deflation, low growth problems, just like the last 10 years. But do you see any of the people that are really concerned about inflation adjusting? Like, where have those guys? Where's Peter Schiff been the past week? Peter Schiff. So that's his name, right? Yeah, Peter Schiff. Well, he is on the Twitter tweetering. Just him talking about Bitcoin. When I search for it, let's see what's on his Twitter. ETFs add over 40 tons of gold in quarter two. Markets are bracing for the wrong impact. So he's just coming in and saying like the bond market is wrong. I don't know, man. Like, top of the hour traders, please hit the like button if you haven't yet. Thanks. You know why I ask channel numbers. Thank you. By the way, we should continue our conversation from yesterday, huh? Which was oh, by the way, we were like 17.5 was where we got in. It did come back a little bit. I'm very tempted, but what would be a reason for me to get in? I think so. The question: should I be looking for a small scalp here, or should I try and make a swing on the bonds? I guess it doesn't really make sense to try and take a swing on the bonds, does it? Because I don't really have a fundamental reason to believe that there's going to be a big move right now. It could happen, but I do kind of lean long here. Anyways, so here's a question for you. What video should I try and make this weekend? So I was thinking one video that I could do is I could do, is day trading for you? And then talk about the factors that will lead to, oh my gosh, look at that. Whew. They were ticking up. You're getting some flow long, and then the 10-year ticked down, and they stacked a big old 3,200 on it. Nobody's selling, but that's a little... Somebody does seem to want it down, but it's not really going, is it? Everything I did wrong at first. So the two videos that I think I'm the most interested in making right now, one would be, is day trading for you? I suppose I could do that video anytime, and it would always be relevant. Because the other video that I want to make is, does the bond market know something that you don't? So it seems like maybe they do. Well, just they're saying it to you guys. I feel like it's a dumb question. It seems like I should make does the bond market know something you don't? I guess one of the things that was making me wishy-washy about it while I was eating breakfast and thinking about it this morning was that I kind of want to make a TikTok like that too. But so if I do that for a YouTube video, what should I make on TikTok today? Nobody asked me any questions on my TikTok. People on TikTok need to ask me dumb questions so that I can answer them and, teach people. Some of your really good videos are a few years old now and you look a bit older and more mature, so maybe it's a good idea to remake some of your best watched videos. Yeah. So the introduction to futures video, I should definitely redo that one. What does a trader do on the weekend? I could do that. Why the whole thing is that we're trying to get, especially on the TikTok, we're trying to get more of this. Oh, this is so weird. It's so interesting. The goal here is to build the channel more based on educating people about current market conditions. That's the strategy, right? So if I make a YouTube video, I can't do it on a TikTok or vice versa. But I guess I could make like a teaser on the TikTok and then I could make a more expanded video on YouTube. I don't know. When I see this kind of like this forced action, like we've been seeing to the downside here in the treasuries, like it makes me really suspicious. So like if I see that kind of activity and then it ends up absorbing on the bid, then that is really like, oh, hold up. Somebody really actually wants to buy this. Stay away from TikTok. It's toxic. No, I really like TikTok though, to be honest. You know what? TikTok does want to lead people into controversial subjects unnecessarily. So I've been seeing lots of TikToks about people's divorces. Oh my gosh. Some of the stories that these guys tell are just so shocking. So shocking. And I show them to my, because I was telling her, like, there's a problem here. Some of these guys are getting screwed, and I'm concerned that it could become a societal problem. But she was saying, well, that's probably not the majority of people's experience. But everything that I'm seeing kind of suggests that it's actually like so common that it is a societal problem. Right? How would you even study and prove that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a testable enough hypothesis here, you know? You ain't gonna convince a Star Wars boy off TikTok, lol. Teaches teenagers how to behave wrong. Yeah. I'm telling you right now, guys. TikTok is the future. Like, it straight up is like, TikTok is the next generation's Twitter, right? Like when it was like 2007, 2008, right? And there was like the two big developments, the Web 2.0, and the two major services were Twitter and YouTube. YouTube by that point had kind of already established itself, and then Twitter came along, right? YouTube is still YouTube, but TikTok is the application that brings the larger public into creating social media content on a new platform. And so, it is very effective. Now, if you're like trying to use it as an influencer, it kind of gets interesting because you don't get a very good conversion rates on TikTok. You know, like people will follow, but like people get on and they doom scroll, like they'll just scroll. And so it's really hard to get them to go from watching a video on TikTok to subscribing to you, and from subscribing to you to actually buying or doing something. So there's lots of people that have like really huge accounts over on TikTok and they aren't really making money from it. Right. But it very much probably depends on what you're doing with the TikTok, right? So like if you are pushing educational content, it's a lot easier to get those click-throughs. But you're not going to get as many subscribers overall. I don't know, but I got like 2,000 on there, so you can get these freak moves. But you know what's interesting though is I'll post a video and the algorithm doesn't really show it to very many people, but I keep getting a good number of subscribers from it. So I don't know. Probably lots of data mining faster to figure out the person by gathering their interests. Haven't looked at the education part there. Yeah, well, and I think the thing that, so here's the thing that TikTok seems to be doing that I think that the rest of the social media sphere has lost. It used to be like this on like Facebook and Reddit, but it isn't anymore. And that is that TikTok will lead me towards good content that I didn't know I wanted. And that's really the thing, is something new. I feel like that a lot of the internet is getting stale. Video games are getting stale, guys. Like, where are all the good games? There's Valorant. Valorant has been the most recent, like, released game, and it's just Counter-Strike. It's kind of meh. Haven't looked at education part there. Seemed more of a song, dance, and memes. Well, no, like that, but that's the thing is that it would kind of probably assumes that you want song, dance, and memes and so forth. But as you scroll and you know, it knows which ones you watch all the way through and which ones you don't. And when all of a sudden it sees that, oh, every time that I show it a video on finance and he watches the whole thing, then I should show him everything I can about finance. It has a hard problem with me because I am interested in watching videos about finance, but everything that people say on TikTok are things that like I already know, or things that I know are wrong. Maybe eventually Unreal Engine 5. Well, man, Unreal Engine 5 does have some crazy tech, huh? I continue to wonder. I have some friends at Epic. I'm still friends with some of them. Even though a little bitter about what happened with Unreal Tournament, some of my friends, man, some of the people in the community just went like full on anti-Epic games. Like, they're really mad about the store thing in particular, and the way that they're trying to coerce people into using their store. They don't like the methods that they're using to promote it. I personally don't really care so much. It's really hard to fault organizations, right? Because it's not like you can go to it. It's a different thing than saying, oh, that you shouldn't do this, you should do this, you know? Like, organizations as a whole are very, very prone to incentives and stuff, right? But so I'm still friends with some of them are just like totally off. But I wonder what they're doing over there now, because they can't possibly just be working on more Fortnite things, right? There's got to be like a secret project that they're going to release, and or it could be that a lot of the company is just working on the engine and they're all working on tech demos or something. But yeah, it has metahumans. Yeah, you know, you can like download and use it, right? That's MetaHuman Creator. It's kind of interesting. I couldn't keep up with all the consumer distractions from the downfall of civilization. Keeping up with the downfall of civilization is hard enough. This looks movie creation related. Well, I think it was mostly just to show off the tech for gaming companies to use, because the issue is once you get the tech to the level that they have it there, you really have a hard time generating new content. You know, how do you make a photorealistic characters in a game and you have to make like dozens of them? How do you do that? Well, yeah, that's how it goes. So they're showing you all of the tools so that developers can can still develop efficiently, and that's one of their key tools. There are some limitations in it, but pretty amazing. Really what it comes down to is that Unreal Engine 5 is the first engine to really truly take advantage of all of the new lighting improvements that they've made in engines, and like it with picking up ray tracing and things like that. And then on top of that, they have implemented the really new optimizations where, you know, your graphics card can access all of the assets directly instead of going through the CPU and things like that. And so they can create incredibly detailed environments too, because these games have been able to push the polygons out like way more than what most games have been using for a while now. So it's not really in the cloud, it's just someone else's computer. Well, actually it's not quite that. So a lot of people think that the cloud just means hosting your information on on a corporate server. Somebody else does the service for you. You do corporate hosting in the cloud. It means that Microsoft does your server hosting for you instead of you doing it yourself. That is not what the cloud is, actually. Okay, what the cloud is the cloud is virtualized layers that run on top of hardware, is really what it is, right? So this is where you could have a server machine that's like this really beefed up server machine, and it's running 4 virtual machines. That's what the cloud is, right? And so, for instance, at Goldman Sachs, everything that they do there is in the cloud. Almost everything that they do there is in the cloud. So when you get a computer, they don't give you a laptop. They give you a virtual desktop somewhere. And so, yeah, it is a operating system running on someone else's computer, but it's not just running on someone else's computer. That computer is running a hypervisor with the cloud management software and running the operating system virtually. That's what the cloud is. Very important. If you're gonna invest in the cloud, it's very important to realize that, because the actual effectiveness of the virtualization and how you manage that environment is much more important than the actually convincing people to let you host their stuff, right? Like it is with Microsoft, right? What the difference between those services is ultimately going to come down to is, okay, so when I'm running 100 different virtual machines in the cloud, is it easier for me to manage it in Microsoft Azure or in Amazon Web Services? Similar, I think, but you don't get 100% access to inside the OS. Well, I mean, there's all sorts of weird stuff about how it switches between them and everything, if you really want to get into that. But as a completely different layer of technology, though, is the thing. So, like, if you want to mess with this stuff on your own, what you want to get is Docker. Docker, you can run Docker on your machine, and that will allow you to run like multiple virtual machines on your computer. So you could run like a Unix virtual machine and all of these things at the same time. Right. So then you go and you start messing with Docker, for instance, then you really understand what cloud technology is. And it's a completely new layer of technology that requires a completely different subset of knowledge. You know, stuff that they didn't teach when I was in school. Maybe they still don't. It's stuff that you have to pick up. I ran OS X in VMware. SD-WAN simplifies management and operation of WAN by decoupling networking hardware from its control mechanism. Does this apply to trading platforms? Okay, so there has been some attempts to get traders to move to the cloud. So like TT has like a cloud platform now, for instance. It hasn't been too successful. So certainly if you are going to run a live algorithm, it makes a lot of sense to run that in the cloud, to run it in a co-located server, which essentially ends up being the cloud, so that you get the most efficient execution. But if I'm like sitting here watching a DOM and everything, it doesn't really help. Having the most responsive interface and everything ends up mattering more, and you don't really get that with a cloud hosted setup. I say TTE. That's Trading Technologies. I'm sure we've talked about them before, right? That's Mr. Rooney. That's Mr. Patrick Rooney runs that. Well, the treasuries continue to push down a little bit, but the E-mini has been pointed down as well because of that. I did see some action earlier that kind of suggested that they would go long. But it has since subsided in the ES. Okay, so you continue to see it here in the treasuries, by the way. Kind of some suspicious action polling, trying to coerce or force them into selling, and then when they do, there's some absorption. That doesn't mean that there can't be continuation, but it makes it situationally for us, I think, difficult for us to make a call, because how do I know that the number of sell orders is going to outnumber the bids through here, and they will continue pushing through? There's like no way for me to know that, because I don't know how many market sell orders are out there. We've traded down about 15,000 contracts since we started doing this. Is that signs of informed trading down? I don't know. Maybe it is, and I'm just being silly, but I'm not so sure. Oh, Schumer says that they might delay the August break to work on. So they are still working on the infrastructure. Got like 4,000 traded into it and 32.65 holding it. It could be worth keeping an eye on that 15.5 to see if they do anything, if they tick up. Okay, so about 500 pulled off just reflexively, and now it looks like all of the other prices, so don't know if that helps either. It was a great trade yesterday. It's retraced the whole pre-open move. Oh yeah, I left that one on, actually. I left it on until the close. So I did lose quite a bit of the profits, but it worked. It was still a great trade. Today, not getting such we're getting action that I just don't like. They did tick up there at 15. I'm gonna look back on this and be like, 15 is where I should have bought, and then it's just gonna be all up from here. Marilyn Manson turns himself into authorities over spitting incident. Want to get to the level where I take more than one trade in the open and let the second one run? Well, so you're using multiple contracts, because I don't know if you necessarily want to take more than one trade so much as it's like, trade it with multiple contracts. And say you trade it with 3 or 4 contracts. Let's say you trade it with 4 contracts and you have profit targets for the first 3 and then you let the 4th one run. And if you get your profits on the first 3 and then it comes back to your entry, you still have room to take on an additional contract. So you can scalp that range a bunch of times and build up all of this risk. And then they really, in order to get you into a losing position, they really, really have to push it far against you, right? And that's where kind of you're able to take advantage of the risk and put it in your favor, right? Because you're taking on risk for very short periods of time to allow you to take on more risk on the larger trade so that you can turn it into more of a swing and then really let your winners run. Right? Asa headed out of town. You're out of town like every weekend. You guys travel the weekend. That would drive me crazy. I just want to stay home. I'm seeing like lots of Twitter activity this morning, but it's not actually like anything interesting. Okay, so they are eating into 15. How many contracts does it trade at 15? Stay home like all day, every day during the pandemic. Well, what else are you going to do, Ace? Go outside? Have you been out there, man? Holy crap. Is that fixed stop? Well, you would still use this fixed stop with that, right? This is why we're having the jigsaw DOM with this column that tells you how much money you're making at each level is really useful, right? Like maybe this is the wrong direction, but let's. No, it's 32.88 into 15.5. So I'm starting to get enough of volume there, maybe, that I could do something, but well, we got 2 minutes before the open and everything else, so we'll see. It'll be interesting to see which way the E-mini decides to try and go off of the open. I run in that, it's not all that bad unless you are a black lab. He is getting, yeah, no way. So like if I go outside and I sit on my back porch, it's kind of nice for it to be hot for a little bit, but then about the point at which I'm going to start sweating, then I want to go inside. But actually going outside in the sun, being in the sun, oh my gosh, it is so brutal. Like I don't think that it's safe to go and be out in that sun for more than like 20 minutes. Let alone run in it. Unless it was like early morning or something. But certainly not any time in the afternoon. Michael Avenatti has been sentenced to 30 months in prison. Hey, remember when some people said he would be a good presidential candidate? Oh, good times. Really hot. Like it's been close to 110 degrees and everything else. But I never remember them implementing so many water restrictions and everybody's lawns starting to die and stuff like that. Like it's crazy. I remember when he said Trump would be in jail before the 2020 election. Oh man, That is funny. I'm surprised that Donald Trump hasn't shit posted about it in some way yet. Maybe he has, and I just haven't seen it because he's not on Twitter, and I don't check Patriots that one all the time anymore, because that website has gone downhill. Okay, so there was a little bit of buying on the open, but it looks mixed. And when they were buying, there was like a lot of back and forth volume on it. So I think I would prefer them to buy this, but Financial Juice has a new thing, unusual activity.live. Oh, and they're doing it through YouTube. That must be, so that sounds like they're making one that's like, here's a stock that has unusual activity in it now. I guess that's cool. I would rather detect unusual activity myself though, yeah. Okay, well, so far it looks like they're working, they are pulling something out a little bit. There was some selling, but Treasuries seem to be recovering that downside. Of course, they're not back at 17.5, but getting some good clicks as it goes too. New York City got flooded from a rainstorm and some streets and subways similar to Sandy. Really? Now see that. We sure could use some water here in Utah. The thing is it wasn't just that it's hot. It was like there wasn't a whole lot of snow this winter is the real problem. I'm hearing that if the water level goes much lower, and I mean, I don't know, I don't see any signs of this subsiding, you know. So if we have a dry summer all the way through into August and September, like Lake Mead might not be able to generate power. And do you have any idea how much power they generate from that? Like, holy crap, that's a little crazy to think about what the potential consequences of that might be. Right? Rolling black and brownouts. That's exactly what was good. What would happen? I mean, think about it. Like in California, they're already doing blackouts. I don't know. I mean, I guess over here in the West, you could probably do solar and get away with it for the most part, right? But every time I see that, I'm like, if only there was a renewable source of energy that was safe and abundant and, you know. What if we were able to like just generate power just from like splitting atoms from things? Wouldn't that be cool? Think about how much power you'd be able to generate from that. It turned back down bearish awfully quickly there, didn't they? They're just being wishy-washy in the E-mini here. I'm tempted to buy the open there at 43.31, but I don't really have any solid read on this, I don't think. I'm a little concerned that we could get something similar to yesterday, where it's like they sell until London closes and then it's bid. That's been happening a lot, hasn't it? Yep, nuclear power is generated by splitting atoms to release the energy held at core or nucleus of those atoms. It's just so crazy that the left hates nuclear power. Well, whatever. Like, I think back on that, because wasn't that what Jimmy Carter did? It was like he was like a nuclear. I don't know. Because it was really 3 Mile Island that kind of turned people against nuclear power, right? Yeah. He served on submarines and worked on the nuclear power plants in the submarines. Yep. He was sent to the Naval Reactors Branch of the Atomic Energy Commission in Washington, D.C. for a 3-month temporary duty. So he's president. He works in that industry. He comes in. He was like, "Oh, it's safe." He tours 3 Mile Island, but the left, and he was a leftist guy, right? But then the left never liked nuclear power after that. Makes no sense to me. I only trade micros on Fridays because of how mixed the open is that day, but Fridays have always been a source of mixed signals. Are Fridays always balanced? Well, I find it interesting that you use the word balanced. I would say that trading on Friday tends to be difficult. Because you're either going to have like really, really big news, like non-farms, or next week it will be retail sales. GDP numbers get released on Fridays. So you either have really big numbers or you have no news at all. If you have no news at all, why would a large institution want to come in and make a trade, right? So you're much less likely on a no news Friday to get one of those big meta orders that you can just ride. And so you get this action that you're talking about. I wouldn't necessarily call it balanced, because the issue is that it's price action that is really just about stopping people out. So a lot of the strategies that retail traders tend to use don't work very well on those actions. And the kind of strategies that I tend to use don't work very well on those days. If you are taking like a really wide stop compared to your target and everything else, then you can probably pull a few ticks out here and there, but it's risky business. That's what my daughter did. She graduated from the Navy next school in Charleston and was assigned to the Teddy Roosevelt. Oh, there you go. I mean, is Jimmy Carter not an advocate of nuclear power? Wait, let's see. Let's search. Jimmy Carter, nuclear power. No. There's the story, who killed U.S. nuclear power. With the election of Jimmy Carter as president in 1976, anti-nuclear, pro-environmental policy was brought right into the White House. In preparation for the new Democratic Council, the spin-off of London's Royal Institute produces Project 1980's report, which called specifically for the controlled disintegration of the U.S. economy. What the heck is that? In preparation for the new Democratic administration, the New York Council on Foreign Relations, a spin-off of London's Royal Institute of International Affairs, produced its Project 1980s report, which called specifically for the controlled disintegration of the U.S. economy. What? Like, it's environmentally bad and we just need to dismantle the U.S. economy? Is that what they're saying? The Rockefeller-funded Trilateral Commission, whose membership dominated the Carter administration, adopted this Project 1980s perspective as its own. Central to their theme of controlled disintegration was the halt of new energy technologies on the horizon, such as advanced nuclear fission and fusion energy. In their place, they promoted the institutionalization of conservation and small is beautiful alternative energy, based on insufficient and expensive wind, solar, and biomass technologies, which had virtually disappeared after the Industrial Revolution. Billions of dollars in federal subsidies were poured into these 19th century throwbacks to try and make them economically palatable to an otherwise highly skeptical public. Huh. Weird. You mean that large orders don't like getting executed during news? Do you mean that news can give them a worse price? No, what I mean is, like, if you are a large institution, why would you be doing anything today? Even if you're a discretionary trader, why would you be wanting to make huge moves today? Today is you come in, you get your little winner, and then you get out of there. You quit for the day, which is what I'm going to do. My robot did get a winner. I think that was a luck. But hey, it worked. I'm not going to complain. But you get what I mean? On an early news Friday, you play the open and you catch your winner, and then you go home early and you start an extended weekend. That's what they do. Like, if there's no news, why would anybody want to be making moves right now, you know? So if there's going to be less volume, and particularly less volume traded by the really big orders, where are you going to derive your edge from as a retail trader, right? What you're going to get is you're going to get this mixed action. You're going to be trading against other retail traders, and maybe that's a good thing that you're trading against other retail traders. But most of the inefficiencies that you're going to pull off of that are going to be taken over by robots. There's just not like any volume to hide behind. So it's hard either way that you do it. Reading some of the reasons why nuclear power is more prevalent. Fossil fuels are cheaper. The fossil fuel industry is a powerful level. The nuclear power plants are vulnerable to terrorist outages, which have caused several serious meltdowns, emergency scenarios. So, let's finish reading this little blurb we had here. The new Department of Energy, which replaced the Atomic Energy Commission, an act that in itself demonstrated the shift in policy, again came under the control of James Schlesinger. While Schlesinger was making speeches about how nuclear energy was not cost-effective, the Department of Energy showed its anti-technology stripes by actively promoting and participating in Sunday festivities. And so I think that was some interesting information, but it doesn't really answer my question, did it? One thing that I do know has been a thing is that nuclear power has been very much connected to nuclear weapons. And so a lot of people on the left were really pushing dismantling of nuclear power because they want the dismantling of nuclear weapons overall. And so that's kind of been maybe something that plays into it. And 3 Mile Island kind of ended up being an incident that scared the public enough that the politicians were able to kind of do those things. But a lot of the things that they say in terms of, why we should use nuclear power versus, or why we shouldn't use nuclear power versus other things, are like total nonsense. Like, nuclear power is vulnerable and unsafe. That's not true. Nuclear power is very safe compared to other energies, like especially natural gas. Okay, like think about all of the havoc that a terrorist could create by damaging a natural gas facility, and people die working at natural gas facilities and mining the natural gas and everything else. And in nuclear power, even if you take the worst incidents that we've had and realize that we're unlikely to have incidents like Fukushima again, because the new designs that we have are very different and much more fundamentally safe. Right. It's just it's safer technology, period. And it's much more reliable than wind and solar. Bill Gates is working on TerraPower. Yes, if I could invest in TerraPower, I would do it. Fortunately, it's not available to me, but I really wish I could get an investment in TerraPower. That's what I want. Oh, I was talking about trading micros or not trading at all. So you're saying that I shouldn't unless there's news, which I don't trade, which means I should just take that day off. That's a lot of people do that, and that wouldn't be a bad idea. So for me, given the action that we've had this week, I kind of have to suspect that there's going to be a little bit of movement here on the Friday. But, my algorithm caught a good winner, right? So should I let my algorithm run? I wanted to build up a little bit first. And I know with the way that my thing works, that it tends to be like the first one always works, and then it's a little bit mixed after that. So there might not be a huge benefit for me to keep it trading. You know what I mean? But like the longer this goes on, the less opportunity there's going to be. So for a lot of people, they just come in and they take one trade. But yeah, for some people, like there's no reason to trade. I think that if I was taking any discretionary trades, I maybe I would have tried doing something in the treasury, although I would hope that it would have been different from the things that I was trying to catch earlier. But even then, I'm going to bet that I would have been preferring long and lost. So it would have been like one loser and then done, or that's what it should be. Like Fridays can be really awful. Just it really is. Now, if there is news and you say, "Oh, what you don't trade the news," well, like why not? That's going to be some of your best activity, right? So you're going to be a non-farms payroll day. Let the non-farms number come out and then trade the aftermath, man. Can be really great opportunities on those days. In the U.S. alone, about $500 million is spent yearly to safeguard nuclear waste from about 100 civilian nuclear energy plants. The amount will only increase as waste continues to accumulate. Yeah, so with nuclear waste, we have new breeder reactors that will be able to utilize that nuclear waste. There'll still be some waste product in the end, but a lot of this, that's why they're saving it, you know? Like, that's why they just store it there on site. As a part of it is that they're hoping that they'll be able to reuse it someday, but then also they do want to just put it all in Yucca Mountain, but then there's all the politics around that, which is just silly because it's totally safe to go and store it there. But like, again, like the new reactors solve all those problems. It's really sad. It's really sad because this, like, think about it. Like 3 Mile Island happened like 20, 30 years ago now. That's 30 years of technology where we could have been developing safer nuclear power. If we had just continued to build better nuclear power, then we wouldn't have any energy problems at all. We could be using 100% nuclear power. It would be safer than the stuff that we have today. You wouldn't be having rolling blackouts in California and all of this other nonsense. It's really, really sad. And then you get all of this stuff, and there's definitely, especially in social networks and commenters and stuff, spreading all of this information about nuclear power that's like just not true. Now, one thing that is true is that nuclear power has been expensive. Like, it requires a lot of investment at the beginning of the power plant. But here again, the technologies that they're developing here around this fix those problems too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the nuclear waste thing is funny because like they're putting restrictions on you being able to transport it. And then so what'll happen is like nuclear waste needs to go from your power plant in Ohio to Yucca Mountain in Nevada, right? In every state that's along the road, some legislator who doesn't really know what's going on says, oh, well, we can't have nuclear waste being transported through our state. We need to stop that. So then they stop that. And like the whole thing, you know that there are other countries that just store their nuclear waste in a facility like that. And it's fine. It's like not even a big deal. Nobody cares. Nuclear power can provide electricity for expanded mass transit. Have you seen these videos? People, they don't have a Tesla charger at their home. They have to go to the quick charger somewhere. And there are so many people with Teslas now that there's like huge lines to get the charger. Have you seen that? That's so incredibly ironic, right? Oh, I missed that bots was coming in and highlighted that. I think it's France where they already store their, like, France is a really great example because when you want to look at like which countries have the most renewable energy are you know, least dependent on fossil fuels, France is at the top of the list because the French invested so much into nuclear power. So if you imagine if the United States had continued that investment, where we would be today. It's just disappointing to think about. If I was president, I would come in and I would say all of these federal projects for wind and solar, gone. And I don't even think, like, I think that the free market can take care of this. Like, I really do. Like, there's so much profit potential in it. You don't have to provide incentives for them or anything. They're going to do it. All you got to do is get rid of the red tape. Come in and all of the red tape that is around making a new nuclear power plant, gone. And allow these guys like TerraPower or whatever, Bill Gates' company and others to build their technologies. We get mini nuclear reactors that are smaller and have safer technology. Allow them to build like molten salt reactors or thorium reactors, and it would be done with. And in all it would take is one administration, 8 years of solid policy around that, start a bunch of projects and everything, and then it would be so effective, and then like nobody would ever talk about it again. It would be like you'd be doing this, and then 30 years from now you'd be like, hey, remember when we were having rolling blackouts in California and everything, and like whatever happened with that? How come that stopped? Oh, they started building nuclear power. Oh, okay, whatever. Like it would be so like non-eventful that people wouldn't even notice that the problem went away. They would throw you out of the Republican Party. The Bushes are oil money, like a Texas old oil money is a powerful lobby. Well, it's so unfortunately, well, maybe fortunately, I have not noticed any kind of partisan tilt to whether you support nuclear power or not. Whether you support nuclear power or not seems to be largely based on how informed you actually are on the science. So people in the scientific community are very, very supportive of nuclear power because they understand the benefits and they're excited about the new developments that we've had, that like next generation of nuclear reactors would be amazing. Donald Trump, I think, did do a few things with nuclear power, but it's kind of like something that's like not really on their radar. Like it's never really been on their radar. So I don't think that having the Republican Party in power or the Democrat Party in power would increase or decrease the chances of getting a nuclear power plant done. I think the only thing that would matter is that presidential administration was pushing for it. When is Powell going to speak today? That's a good question. So there is like a report, right? I don't think that I saw any on the calendars, but I did see it mentioned in my news squawk. Well, there's Fed monetary policy report at 9. Maybe that's it. It is submitted along with testimony from the Federal Reserve Chair to the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs to the House Committee on Financial Services. Yeah, at 9. I don't expect that there to really be anything big from that. But because it's like the only thing really going on today, it could end up taking a big focus. For now, though, I don't think that that's really affecting any of the action right now. We had a pretty solid uptrend. I kind of wish that I had found some ways within my algorithm to, extend targets. But I don't need to. It's probably better if we just do them one at a time. And the treasuries have just kind of, they tried to make another attempt to lower lows. I guess the 10-year did go down lower by 1 tick, but the 5-year equaled its previous low. And now it's just kind of sitting here being like, yeah, meh. So, well, that was pretty aggressive. And then an iceberg there. So I don't know. There is something going on under the surface. I mean, there is volume trading in here and everything, but it's too difficult for me to suss out what it is. Or, and maybe there is something going on, but it doesn't really give us a trade. So I don't know. Several U.S. utilities back out of a deal to build novel nuclear power plant. 8 of the 36 public utilities that had signed on to help build the plant have backed out of the deal. The withdrawals come just months after the Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems, which intends to buy the plant containing 12 small and modular nuclear reactors, announced that completion of the project would be delayed by 3 years. It also estimates the cost will climb from $4.2 billion to $6.1 billion. Wow. Well, that was a long time ago, though, wasn't it? I do remember, though, when they were about to build that plant in Utah. But there's another plant. The more interesting one is the TerraPower one up in Idaho, I think. And that one is apparently happening. There's also, like, the research on the molten salt reactors is, like, still ongoing. Because the issue with the molten salt reactors is more to do with longevity, because what they're doing is they're basically taking sodium and melting, sodium and combining it with uranium and turning it and melting it, turning it into the molten liquid. And then that's what they power the nuclear reaction with. And that's very corrosive, right? Having, like you have pipes with that kind of thing in it, it's going to do weird stuff to the pipes. So all of the research right now for that is going into like materials to be like, okay, can we develop these materials that will last a really long time? Because you need a nuclear power plant to last a really long time to make it worth it. But still cheap, so that it can be cost effective. So that research is still going on, and there's, they don't need anything to go on that because it's all materials research. Here's a terror that you might have a new job in stock options. So yeah, maybe that's what I got to do, is I just got to go work for them. They don't have an office in Utah, though, do they? I really would like ownership in TerraPower, man. I don't know how else to put it. Mount Bellevue is their only location, it looks like. I still can't distinguish between the news that will really move very fast and the ones that will go flaccid. Well, but it's hard for me to answer because to me, it's so obvious which ones are going to do that and which ones aren't. So let's start by saying that it depends on the asset, right? So the question is, how significant is that particular news or economic release to the asset that we're talking about? So for instance, jobs growth is how many people have jobs and how much money they're making from it. Is that an important factor in how much businesses are going to make? Yes, it is. It's probably the most important thing. So the jobs report, the non-farms, goes at the very, very top. And those weekly unemployment claims reports are always fairly significant, right? But then it also depends on the asset. So for instance, treasuries, one of the biggest things that move treasuries is whether or not, really what treasuries are all about is predicting what the Federal Reserve is going to do and when they're going to raise or lower interest rates. And what's going to be the biggest factor in that? What's inflation doing? So as a result, the CPI and PPI reports are some of the most important reports for the treasuries, that and the unemployment reports, because the Federal Reserve has a dual mandate, right? So those are like the ones that are high impact. That's why those are considered high impact when you go to Forex Factory. And then everything else kind of tends to be like smaller things. Like then there's the business activity reports, like the PPI, the PMIs and things like that, right? So those are going to have like a more medium impact, but there can be a situation where this particular time that report will have a more or less impact. And why would that be? Well, because the market, it's answers the question, right? Because really you'll see happen is the market will come to a point and they've got all of their models and they'll say, okay, here's all of our models, here's all of the information that we know right now, and here are the things that we can project. What is the price of things going to be? And then there's going to be a certain amount of uncertainty in that, and it's going to be based off of certain parts of the model that are the most uncertain. So if, for instance, we're talking about inflation, for instance, right now, right? So you go through all of these reports. Well, how much inflation is like a big wild card right now. That's the thing that people are like the most unsure about, is will inflation a year from now still be increasing, right? So because that's the wild card, the thing that is the most unknown in the market, that piece of news ends up being more significant because that's the thing that all of their models and everything is waiting on for them to make their next move, right? But probably the most useful thing that you're going to get is when you're watching the DOM, how do the orders pull? How do the orders pull? Right? So if the orders pull, that is, you look at all the liquidity. Here we are on the treasuries, and we're showing 4,000 contracts at most levels. And then all of a sudden it goes down and there's only 500 to 1,000 at each level. That's pulling. There's probably news coming, and it's significant news. So if you have a position on, might want to think about taking it off. And you'll see the instruments that are more affected are going to pull more. And they'll pull earlier. Another thing is, like, if it's expected to be a really big thing, like say we're having the FOMC interest rate decision in press conference, you will see that the liquidity pulls earlier than normal. And there's been some reports that were like really hotly anticipated where they pulled like a whole 30 minutes before it happened. I've seen that before. And so that's kind of how you can judge how significant a piece of news is going to be. Now, one of the things that might be confusing you is that sometimes you have a report and it is a very highly anticipated report, but then the number comes out and it's exactly in line with all of the analysts' expectations. Then nothing happens, right? But I guess an easier way to explain how to deal with this problem is you need to understand what's going on. You need to understand what the fundamental discussions are and what the analysts and traders are talking about. You know, the problem has been inflation. This week, things have really turned towards the aggressive actions that China has been taking against businesses and competition economically between the U.S. and China. Surveys of economic activity slowing down and showing that we're probably moving mid-cycle. The whole issue with OPEC and the effect that that's going to have on oil and oil companies, right? These are all the major narratives that are going on right now that are probably influencing why we've seen bonds move up so much this week, and some of the big selling that we've seen in the E-mini. So when you know all of that stuff, you're following the news and everything, then you can turn around and you can say, okay, what is something that's going to have an impact on all of these things? A reliable website? Well, for getting your news, probably the three best places are going to be Zero Hedge, CNBC, and Bloomberg are all three places you can get. And I would also recommend reading News Squawk's morning briefing that they put out, and you can access for free. That's exactly it. Thank you. That was a ton of information that I just spilled out, and I'm thinking, like, how many traders know this stuff or don't? Ah, that looks painful. It's showing this picture of they're saying that yesterday's opening gap is now lower, or is nearly filled in. And they show this picture of from SpongeBob where he's like screwing his two teeth together. That just, I don't like that at all. I don't want to see that anymore. Richard Branson plans to get to space before Jeff Bezos. This whole thing about which millionaire is going to get into space first is kind of funny. What? Okay, I'm reading a news story now. Inspired by the Reddit forum Wall Street Bets, some 122,000 member strong community hope to corner the market and bring down what they say is an unjust banking system in the silver market. The market professionals say that is unlikely to succeed. There's plenty of silver, and central bankers in the United States and Europe expect inflation to stay in low single digits. But bankers aren't getting through to this group. There's a bit of anger, like, screw the system. If there's a back door to wealth, I might take that door because the front door is closed. The bankers and others have basically shut that door for everyone who is not themselves. Well, so these are people that have been trading for a while and are realizing that it's really hard to make money from trading because of the competition. Yeah. Okay. The core of the movement is a Reddit community called Wall Street Silver, formed in January. At the time, Wall Street Bets was marshaling up a uprising of ordinary people. Really, that stuck around, huh? Reuters spoke to more than 20 members who call themselves silverbacks and apes and have a homepage featuring an image of an army of primates on the march from the Planet of the Apes movie and say things like ape-like shiny, the organized raid days on which everyone buys together. Well, that's not legal. The group's founder, Ivan Bayu Kihi, is a 24-year-old former car salesman living with his parents in Alberta, Canada. Oh my gosh. Oh, guys. As somebody that owns a small amount of silver, that is not what I want to hear. Is that the other people that are buying are complete morons? Okay. Silver costs around $26 an ounce. Stackers think the price will rise as inflation erodes the value of currencies, demand for silver rises, and supplies run short. Some say that buying up bars and coins, they can jack up prices by 100% or even 1,000% to the point where they can call the shots against the so-called bullion banks. Well, I do think that there are some significant short positions in silver and golds. I'm not shaming car salesmen. I'm shaming that, like, he lives with his parents and stuff. It doesn't sound to me like somebody that really knows what they're talking about. That's all. But they are right in that. Remember that day when they thought that silver was going to be taking off and like people were buying silver over the weekend and silver like really, really shot up. So yeah, if it were to become a thing, there would be a really crazy short squeeze because there are some significant big positions short in silver. The problem with all of that whole scenario is, well, number one, it would be much better if you had a fundamental situation for the price of silver to be rising, like that inflation was rising much more than what the interest rates were. And given the action that we've seen in the interest rates over the past week, odds on that one doesn't seem so good, do they? And plus, you wouldn't want it to be where the interest rates are increasing, because it would really have to be like inflation is really out of control and they're raising interest rates, right? That would have to be kind of the situation that you're looking for. And then and then even if they did get a rise, it would be really short-lived because producers can just mine more silver. Like, they have a lot of unused capacity. So yeah. Doesn't mean that silver is like a terrible call per se. Is just that some of the reasons that they want to get into it are a little silly. In a year or two, we will have millions of people in the movement. Bayohuki told Reuters, and then it will be over for the bullion banks. I don't think that if you corner the silver market that it's going to end the banking system. Nope. Somebody already tried that. I lived with my parents for years. I bet Seth did too. No, as soon as I got married, I moved out. My brother still lives with my parents. Look, when I'm looking for financial advice, I'm probably not going to go to somebody that lives with their parents. Just saying. Just saying. I know it. You know it. Everybody knows it. So from age 0 till you got married. When did I get married? I was like 26. Seems about right. I don't know. Was 2008. So I was actually 23. Right, because 2015 would have been 20. That's 3. 23, yeah. For years and years and years, just like the rest of us. Yes. And if at the time that I was living with my parents, I was the leader of a Reddit community, and I was encouraging hundreds of thousands of people to buy silver on the theory that if enough people buy silver, that it will undermine the banks and lead to insane profits. Right? Then future me would also be calling that past Seth stupid and shouldn't be listened to and experienced. How can you monitor a child's iPhone with? I think there are some applications you can put on them. But I don't know anything about that. Yeah. I don't know, man. It bothers me that there are so many millennials out there are getting into it, investing for off of conspiracy theories. Like that is so weird to me. That GameStop and silver have basically turned into conspiracy theories. And that's what's driving people's investing behavior. Ugh. I wish that what drove people's investing behavior was that they like trying to price securities and figure out what's going to happen. Oh, well. Oh, well. This is a long story. Why do you have a child? Because they slept with my... I know, right? I did that too. Still do that from time to time, to be honest with you. That is a question for Google for sure, RJ. Let me Google that for you. Let's see here. Spy on my children iPhone app. Let's see what they get. Here you go. Look at this. Well, this is an old story, but from 2015 on the Huffington Post, 5 apps to spy on your kids without them knowing. It's a dangerous world out there for your teens. These apps may help you keep track of it. See how easy that was? Was she drunk? I don't know. Oh, yeah. So Salim has a lot of power to drive narrative and topics. So all of you guys do. If any of you guys say anything that was off topic, I would probably comment on it. I do ignore a lot of the things that he says. Ace Trade says replacement knee surgery. Ew, no, I don't want to talk about knee surgery. Where are we talking about? Or no, it was my wife was talking about that the other day because I said I saw a thing on TikTok about hip surgery that I thought was gross, and she was like, "Oh, you should see a knee surgery," because she is so weird. There are like these shows on Netflix about like unusual surgeries and stuff. And I'm like, okay, it's an interesting medical story and everything. But then they have like video of the actual surgery and you can see them cut up and everything. I'm like, I don't want to watch that. That's disgusting. Doesn't bother her at all. She thinks it's super interesting. I'm like, you should have been a surgeon. Low heart rate, probably would have a steady hand. Should have been a surgeon. If I invent a time machine, well, I told her that I didn't, because I asked her if she had ever had like a random encounter with a blonde-haired man when she was younger. She said that it didn't happen. So that means that I don't invent a time machine, and unfortunately. But if I had a time machine, I would go back and in addition to having a sexual encounter with her, I would encourage her to become a surgeon. The DH rule in baseball? Wait, what is that? See, I think that the problem that you have there, RJ Will, is that you picked one of the subjects that I probably know the least about. I don't know anything. I was watching a TikTok yesterday, and the guy was coaching on how to bat, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've done it all wrong my whole life. Let's see here. The DH rule in baseball. The designated hitter rule allows teams to use another player to bat in place of the pitcher. If a player serving as a designated hitter is later used on defense, he continues to bat in his same lineup spot. But for the rest of the game, his team cannot use a designated hitter to bat in place of the pitcher. Why is that? Is that because the pitcher is too fragile to go to bat? So Ace and I can run the room. Yeah, totally you can. Totally you can. Last time I touched a Major League Baseball stadium, that team won the World Series. I am now selling my touch for this next year. Pitchers are lousy hitters. Is that really the case? Interesting. Is there something natural about, what makes you good at throwing the ball makes you bad at hitting the ball? Or is it that the pitchers just have less practice with it because they spend all of their time practicing pitching? It's painful to hear Seth talk about baseball. I'm sure it is. I know nothing about baseball. I find baseball not that interesting. It's not that there's not interesting things about the game. I'm actually maybe a little jealous of people that enjoy that game, but my ADHD mind just can't handle it, man. Should Sirhan... Wait, who is that? Man, RJ. You need to bring up a societal issue that we can have an intellectual conversation about. Palestinian militant who assassinated Robert F. Kennedy? No, heck no. He shouldn't be paroled. No, sir. How did I not know that? Wow, that... Oh my gosh, I'm just realizing, I know about the Robert F. Kennedy assassination and everything, but I didn't really know anything about the background of like who did it and them. I should do some research about that. Do we get to watch the Fed monetary policy report? No, I'm going to be quitting as soon as that is starting, unfortunately. RJ says that he didn't do it. Oh, does he say that he didn't do it? Wait. No. Despite the fact that Sirhan admitted his guilt in a recorded confession while in police custody on June 9th, a lengthy publicized trial followed in the People of the State of California versus Sirhan. The judge did not accept his confession and denied his request to withdraw his plea of not guilty in order to plead guilty. Oh, it's all complicated. On February 10th, Sirhan's lawyers made a motion in chambers to enter a plea of guilty to first-degree murder in exchange for life imprisonment rather than the death penalty. Sirhan told Judge Herbert V. Walker that he wanted to withdraw his original plea of not guilty in order to plead guilty as charged on all counts. He asked that his counsels disassociate themselves. Wait, what? In order to plead his guilty as charged on all counts. He also asked that his counsel disassociate themselves from this case completely. The judge asked him what he wanted to do about sentencing, and Sirhan replied, "I will ask to be executed." Walker denied the notion and said, "This court will not accept the plea." He also denied Sirhan's request for his counsel to withdraw. His counsel entered another motion to withdraw from the case of their own volition, but Walker denied that as well. Walker subsequently ordered that the record be sealed pertaining to the motion. So we don't know why he said that. Okay, this is like a really interesting court case, man. The trial proceeded and opening statements began on February 12th. The lead prosecutor, a World War II veteran of Easy Company fame who later became a justice of the California Court of Appeal, David Fitz, delivered the prosecution's opening statement, providing examples of Sirhan's preparations to kill Kennedy. The prosecution showed that Sirhan was at the Ambassador Hotel on June 3rd, 2 nights before the attack, to learn the building's layout, and that he had visited a gun range on June 4th. Alvin Clark, Sirhan's garbage collector, testified that Sirhan had told him a month before the attack of his intention to shoot Kennedy. The defense counsel included attorney Grant Cooper, who hoped to demonstrate that the killing had been an impulse act of a man with a mental deficiency. But Walker admitted into evidence pages from 3 of the journal notebooks of Sirhan had kept that suggested that the crime was premeditated and quite calculating and willful. On March 3rd, Cooper asked Sirhan in direct testimony if he had shot Kennedy. Sirhan replied, "Yes, sir," but then said that he did not bear Kennedy any ill will. Sirhan also testified that he had killed Kennedy with 20 years of malice afterthought. He explained in an interview with David Frost in 1989 that this referred to the time since the creation of the State of Israel. He has maintained since then that he has no memory of the crime or of making that statement in court. I'm sorry, man, but with what I have just read right there in Wikipedia, I am pretty sure that that guy is guilty AF. No, bots. We're talking about Robert F. Kennedy's assassination, because RJ is saying that Sirhan didn't actually do it. So now we're reading about the court case. And it sounds like that this Sirhan guy is a little crazy, and but that he also definitely did it. The defense based its case primarily on the expert of testimony of Bernard L. Diamond, MD, a professor of law in psychiatry at the University of California, Berkeley, who testified that Sirhan was suffering from diminished capacity at the time of the murder. Sirhan was convicted on April 17, 1969, and was sentenced 6 days later to death in the gas chamber. 3 years later, his sentence was commuted to life in prison owing to the California Supreme Court's decision in the People of the State of California versus Robert Page Anderson, which ruled that capital punishment is a violation of the California Constitution's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. The February 1972 decision was retroactive, invalidating all existing death sentences in California. Oh. So, Bot says, current events and how it affects today's markets. I see. Yeah. Well, actually, so the funny thing is that the way that this got started, John, was that Salim, asked a question of some sort that kind of got us off topic. He did ask a good question that we really went into detail about how to tell whether a specific piece of news will have a significant impact on the markets. We went in that, and then we went off on a tangent, and RJ was like, well, he just goes on a tangent. He has too much control over where the stream goes. And so I told him, well, if you came up with a random subject, we could probably go completely off the rails that way too. So RJ Will did that, and he gave us a really great subject to talk about: RFK's assassination. He should have gotten 15 years alone for walking around with a stupid double name. I wouldn't be sorry. I think this is super interesting to talk about. Like, honestly, I don't want to take another trade. My robot did its thing. Maybe it would have taken more trades. I don't know. I'll run a back test later to see if it would have taken more trades. How it would have come out, but cruel and unusual punishment is how I feel listening to this stream sometimes. So did you know all of this stuff about Sirhan, though? Come on. Appeals. Sirhan's lawyer Lawrence Teeter later argued that Grant Cooper was compromised by a conflict of interest and was, as a consequence, grossly negligent in the defense of his client. The defense moved for a new trial amid claims of setups, police bungles, hypnotism, brainwashing, blackmail, and government conspiracies. On June 5th, 2003, coincidentally the 35th anniversary of Kennedy's assassination, Teeter petitioned a federal court in Los Angeles to move the case to Fresno. He argued that Sirhan could not get a fair hearing in Los Angeles, where a man who helped to prosecute him was then a federal judge. The U.S. District Judge William Matthew Brenner in Los Angeles was the assistant U.S. attorney during Sirhan's trial and part of the prosecutorial team. Since 1994, Teeter had been trying to have the state and federal courts overturn Sirhan's conviction, arguing his client was hypnotized and framed possibly by a government conspiracy. Oh my gosh. Okay, so now we're getting to where does anybody claim that Sirhan didn't do it when Sirhan was like saying in court that he did it? Well, Teeter claims that he was hypnotized. I don't think that hypnotism can make you do that. I'm thinking of filing a class action lawsuit on behalf of everyone for the cruel punishment. You should. Actually, that might be fun. I can try representing myself to see if we can get the court to throw it out. But you would probably have to pay some money to file it in court. Probably be more expensive than you'd want to pay. RFK killed himself. He was so mad about Maryland. Okay, wait. Let's see if there's more. During one hearing, Teeter referred to testimony from the original trial transcripts regarding the prosecution's eyewitness to the attack, author George Pimpleton, in which he said that Sirhan looked enormously composed. He seemed purged. This statement coincided with the defense's argument that Sirhan had shot Kennedy while in some kind of hypnotic trance. The motion was denied. Teeter died in 2005, and Sirhan declined other counsel to replace him. because Sirhan is crazy. On November 26, 2011, Sirhan's defense teams filed court papers for a new trial saying that expert analysis of recently uncovered evidence shows 2 guns were fired in the assassination and that Sirhan's revolver was not the gun that shot Kennedy, and he should be freed from prison or granted a new trial based on formidable evidence asserting his innocence and horrendous violations of his rights. But I thought it just said that he declined other counsel to replace Dieter. Whatever. On January 5th, 2015, Sirhan's motion was denied by U.S. District Judge Beverly Reed O'Connell in Los Angeles, who said that Sirhan failed to meet the showing required for actual innocence that might excuse his having failed to seek his freedom sooner in federal court. In other words, Sirhan's case was not strong enough. Though petitioner advances a number of theories regarding the events of June 5th, 1968, petitioner does not dispute that he fired 8 rounds of gunfire in the kitchen pantry of the Ambassador Hotel. O'Connell wrote, petitioner does not show that it is more likely than not that no juror acting reasonably would have found him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. Or the way that she wrote that is really weird. Petitioner does not show that it is more likely than not that no juror acting reasonably would have found him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. That's weird. Filing fees are nothing if you flirt with the court. Okay, you do that, Ace. See how well... I want to see that. Take your phone with you and record, and we'll see how good you are. Oh, you know what this reminds me of? So there was this video, or there was a TikTok where this girl, she looks just like an average, average Asian girl. And she says, oh, I finally came across, using the little voice, I finally came across that hot guy in my building that lives across the hallway from me. So she gets in there. They both get in the elevator. And she's like, I like your dog. And he's like, thanks. And she's like, I like your shoes, because he had like really nice loafers on. And he's like, thanks. So then she asks him if he has a girlfriend, and he says that he does. He's clearly not interested in her, right? And oh my gosh, some of the comments in that thread were like, what? Everybody's like, he must be gay or he has a boyfriend, because he was dressed nice and everything. But like the reality of this situation is that the way that she came onto him was so awkward and painful. She had no game. And I know that women, they can get away with picking up on a guy having no game, but it did not work in this particular instance. Now, since then, I have seen some comments that suggest that it was actually all staged and that he is actually her boyfriend. But I digress. So my wife and I were talking about this and how you would go about it, because everybody, one of the things I've seen is people say, men would love to get the kind of attention that women get, and if like women catcalled you, that you would love it and it would feel great. And I'm like, no, because the awkwardness of somebody doing something so socially taboo would just, that alone would turn me off so much that I wouldn't be interested or respond to it, right? So my wife was arguing with it about like what would be the best way to approach somebody like that. Was he hot though? Well, you couldn't see his face, but he looked pretty fit. I'll say that. And he was dressed very nicely. So it got me through college. So we were talking about how to do that. So if you go to the coroner's office and sweet talk them so that you can pay less in filing fees to sue me, and send us the video, we'll put it on the channel. That would be just lovely, I think. Is that why you bat your eyelashes every time you look straight at the camera? Oh my gosh, I dated this one girl, one of the girls that I really, really liked, and she would bat her eyes. I don't know if it was like intentional or like an unconscious thing or what, but she would bat her eyes at you. It was I had never noticed something like that in somebody before. Turns out she wasn't. She definitely wasn't she. Anyways. Weird how she had the camera go. Well, that was what my wife said. She's like, she must look really awkward holding her phone like that. You know, I've seen that a bunch of times on TikTok though, where they're recording somebody approaching somebody else. I don't know if any of them are actually real. Like, if I was going to approach somebody else and there was like chance of rejection, last thing I would want to do is record that. And then if I was rejected, the last thing I would do is post it on TikTok. It's an interesting thing. Maybe I can we see if I can find some way to somehow bring it back to trading? Because here's the thing. It's the long game, right, of dating is what I call it. In the long game, you don't let them know immediately that you like them, because then you could be rejected and there could be possible negative consequences from being rejected, right? Like if you live in a small town with only a few hundred people, right? And there's really only like 6 people your age, right? And one of those 6 people rejects you in like strongly, because you hit on them like that, and then they turn around and they tell the other 6 girls that they rejected you, then that makes life a lot more difficult for you, right? So this is a strategy that developed in a world where there wasn't a lot of options. So you approach them slowly, you kind of try and get a lot of signals that they're really interested. You start some small talk, and because they're interested in small talking with you, you can pursue further. But if they just say, oh, thank you, and then they don't try and continue the conversation on at anymore, then that's a signal that they're not interested at that time, right? Well, we don't live in that world anymore. We don't. You could ask, there are tens of thousands of women that you could potentially have a relationship with that are your age and would be eligible, right? So it doesn't make sense to hedge like that. What's more important is that you are able to look through as many of your options as possible. And so from that respect, you don't want to waste time with the ones that aren't interested in you, so you want to cut to the chase. This is why Tinder is so effective, and I think that you're going to find that apps like this are just going to play a larger and larger role in dating as time goes forward, as much as everybody seems to claim that they hate it. But what's going to happen is that eventually it will evolve, and there will be expert advice on how to do it, and people will tell you how to do it. And here's what you do is you get in, and if you like the way that they look, you swipe right. And then if you match, you talk to them, you get them off the app as soon as possible, you get their number, and then you text them. And as soon as you start texting them, you set up a date and you meet them in person. And that's it. That's the way, because you don't want to waste time. You got to learn to live in a world of abundance where there's so many opportunities, right? And in that kind of a world, what are the things that matter? Being able to see as many of the opportunities as you can, and being able to filter through them quickly to know which ones are really worth taking and which ones aren't. And it's the same thing with trading, right? There are so many trades that you can take. Every second goes by is a moment that you could potentially enter into or exit a trade. So if it's a Friday and there's no news, and you really don't have any clue whatsoever what direction things are going to go, why would you waste your time on that? Why would you waste your capital on that particular trade when there's millions of other trades that you could potentially take? You've got to learn to live in a world of abundance, because our brains aren't wired that way. Our brains want to think scarcity, I have to take a trade now because I won't be able to take one later. It's silly. It doesn't make any sense, does it? Our nature causes us to do things that are not beneficial to our trading. I'll settle on this. There's enough evidence to warrant a parole hearing or retrial. I'm not so sure I agree with that. So from what we just read right there, that guy tried to shoot Robert F. Kennedy. Now, there is some interesting evidence there that suggests that there was somebody else involved. That is interesting. But I think that the judges in these cases have made the correct decisions. Nice segue into trading from trolling women on Tinder there, Sam. I wouldn't say that those applications are very bad for women, but many women and many men, to be frank with you, but I think that women tend to be on the negative side of it more, do not know how to function in a world of abundance. And so they don't use the application the way that they probably should. If you're a girl, you're going to get so many guys because almost everybody that you swipe right on, you're going to match with. And so how you filter matters a lot, right? For women, the filter matters more. So what filters should you use? It's the same with trading, because we all use filters of some sort. Even though they might not really actually have efficacy, we all use filters, right? Like a trend filter. We say if the moving average is rising, then I only want to buy. Or if the past 5-minute candle is red, then I only want to sell. Like that's a filter, right? And that filter will narrow us in on a certain number of possibilities. And what you're going to get is you're going to get some trades that are excluded by the filter that would have been successful. And you're going to get some trades that are included by the filter that are going to fail, right? And so you kind of want to minimize that. You want to get the ones that you want as many of the successful trades to be included by the filter and as many of the bad trades to be excluded by the filter. And that's how you judge how effective a filter is, right? So if you're a girl, what are the most effective filters to use? Well, what filters do women tend to use? How tall is he and how good looking is he? And are those things the things that are actually going to be the most indicative of whether or not you will have a good relationship with them? And I would argue no. Is particularly not height. Height has absolutely no application in the modern world at all. And I don't think that you should include it. I guess if it really, really changes the way that you see people, then I guess that's your discretion. And especially if it's just like, they can't be under 5'9". That's okay. Probably you're not filtering out too many men. Some people will say they has to be 6 feet tall, and then you're filtering out too many people, right? Then you're hurting the expectancy of your system, right? So I would be going for more like things like filtering on, do you have shared values, for instance, right? Did you see the video where a girl uses Tinder with a fake profile for a week? She even cries while describing how awful she felt being rejected all the time. Yeah, I've seen many videos of that kind. Do you have a title for today? I don't. Friday. Let's call today a Friday gap fill. Because that's going to be the most useful for if we're searching I don't know. I need to change some things. I wish, so I've changed this whole thing so that like my channel is cleaner, and I like that. It doesn't appear that this system actually changes any of the numbers at all on the channel. But a big downside, I think, is that it can't search. You can't search the videos. So I don't know what to do about that, but I digress. Anyways, so this is the same thing with your trading. You should really think about your filters, right? So one of the filters that I think is really common that I think that we should question is the trend filter. Because especially when we're talking about short time frames, how often do you actually see a reversal given certain trend conditions? Right? Yeah. It is, you kind of got to ask you some questions about that. Now, I think there are some times where a trend filter is appropriate, but there are other times where it's not. So Gabon says the counter trend period. It kind of sucks that last little bit that I would always get, the last 30 minutes of the London close that we used to trade, but since then I haven't been able because they changed the time for our morning meetings and stuff. Kind of hurts, but overall it kind of hurts because how often has it been lately where it was kind of bearish on the open, and then after London closed, then it was all nothing but up? That's happened a lot. We still got 5 minutes. And being promiscuous, oh my gosh. There's certainly some things about the way that relationships in our society have changed is changed so much. It's hard for me to really understand what the impacts of those changes are and where we should try to be moving to, So that's where the most that I can do is look at it from a data perspective and say, in a world of abundance, your filtering methods are important. What should you really be using to filter with? Oh, today is the 9th. Thank you. Yeah. I always put it in my profile. Walks on beaches and promiscuity are my favorite things. What? By the way, we have 16 concurrent viewers and 15 likes. So thank you very, very much. I use a nice body and face. Well, it's not wrong to filter based on looks. I do think that most people are, when they get on dating apps at least, are too particular about what they look for in body and face. So the issue is that here again, your body evolved in a world of scarcity. And so it had the ability to look at, the dozen or so prospects that you had out there and go, oh, which one is the best looking, right? And so the gist of that is that we base attractiveness on a relative scale. So when you are being presented on a dating app with, one person is like the best looking person in the world, and then everybody else after that looks that much less attractive to you because of that, right? So when you're scrolling through, I would look more for disqualifying things. Okay, like I mean, I can't really think of anything that's really truly disqualifying, but there are some people that are just really ugly, right? And that would dramatically affect your attractiveness to them, right? Like, basically what I'm saying is, if you're scrolling through and you see somebody and they are disgusting to you, that's a different thing. But if you look at them and like, it's just kind of, they seem like okay, you should still swipe right on those people. If they meet your real filters, which are like shared values and lifestyle and things like that, right? Because what's going to happen is you're putting so much emphasis on the looks filter that you're going to filter out the person that matches the best with you in terms of what kind of a life you want to have after you're married. You get what I mean? Ace says all humans are beautiful. I wish that was the case, but I have seen some people. I used to think that. I mean, I know it's awful to say it, but I used to think that. And then I went to the plastic surgery subreddit. And the plastic surgery subreddit is basically all people that have had rhinoplasty done to them. And yeah, there were some people that were absolutely hideous, and then they got the surgery and they look amazing. And I have to say, I don't know why that is the case, that I view it like, well, that we see it like that. But there are some traits that you could potentially have. And certainly if you're not kept up, like that's the thing, is that if you're really grooming and taking care of yourself, most people are going to look okay, right? That's why I was saying, like, the app kind of encourages you to use looks as your filter, right? And certainly being attracted to your partner is an important thing, right? I just think that the app kind of encourages people to reach further than they should. For most guys, because you don't get very many matches and you go through them a lot, you kind of become desensitized to it, and you start to get a pretty good idea of how good looking you are, and who is actually obtainable for you. But women, they don't get that. So really it's kind of more, it's kind of more advice for women, right? So like, there are some guys that he's going to have the full on neck beard and he's just this big, huge ball of blubber. Okay. And you're going to come across him on the dating website and he's just disgusting and repulsive to you, and don't swipe right on that guy. But there's going to be this other guy that, you know, there's nothing unusual about him. He's just a normal, okay looking guy, except he's bald. And so you don't like him because he's bald. And what's going to happen is you're going to swipe left on him and you don't look at the other things that are more important, right? I hate makeup too. I like natural. I never tell. So can I give you some advice? This is, I guess I'm not an expert in a way like to be sharing advice in this way, but let me tell you something. Always compliment women on their makeup. Even if you think that you like women more natural, I don't think that that's probably not true. You probably don't realize how much makeup women put on even when they look natural. But the women put a significant amount of effort into their makeup to look good, and to telling them that they aren't good at it, because that's basically what you say. Oh, I prefer natural. That basically means, oh, you're just not good enough with makeup to look better than your natural self. That's what you're saying to them. So don't tell them that. Just always compliment them on the makeup because they put a lot of effort into it. Also, never disrupt the putting on of makeup. Okay? Like, the putting on of makeup is like dangerous to interfere with. Right? I think all of you fellows are certainly swipe right worthy whether you wear makeup or not. Oh man. I dread the day that someday in the future that the pharmaceutical industry finally convinces men to start wearing makeup. It's going to happen someday. And it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. Oops. I want to check something real quick. No, still not. I hope someday we get those clips. I know, it's going to happen. And then guys are going to have to put on makeup to be competitive. It's going to happen. I think it's going to happen. Like straight up, because I will put... I have a little routine. Wouldn't necessarily call it makeup, but I have a little routine for the head. So that when I'm on not camera... on a nice camera, that there's not such a huge shiny spot on my head that it's distracting for the video. You do look better. It's only going to be a matter of time, I think, before men start realizing that they stand a better chance that they put. Hopefully that it will just be very, very natural look, right? It'll just only be like foundation and like something under your eyes, and there won't be like eyeliner and the things that make women look womanly, but maybe filling in your beard. That'd be interesting. I wonder what that would be if I filled in my beard, what that would be like. I think it would probably look silly. I wonder what baby Asher will be wearing in 15 years. You know, teens have to do something odd or weird. So will he have parrots hanging from his ears or decide, well, I don't. That would be weird if Jerry was hanging from his ears. Gus says I'll be too old to matter. I'm more interested in what is it going to be like when we're 60, and am I going to live in an old folks home? Like, is that going to be appealing to me? Because every old folks home that I've been in, living in a place like that sounds like a complete nightmare to me. But maybe part of that is that they don't care about the things that I care about, like internet access, you know, having a really nice computer. I don't know. But maybe in the future they will have the latest console there, or you'll play Super Smash Brothers all day. Like, who knows? Maybe they will have stuff that will make it really entertaining for me, but I can't see myself living in an old folks home. What is it going to be like when we're 60? It's kind of weird. Like, you realize once we're in our 30s and 40s, like the next stage, like that's kind of the next stage of your life that you kind of have to start thinking about and planning for. And it's kind of weird when you go all the way from planning the next 10 years of your life out to planning the next 30 years of your life out. Time for me to go, guys. I will see you on Monday. In the meantime, stay profitable.